Hello, friends. Welcome to another reel related to Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. So let's look at where can we bracket Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose. Where could we bracket Subhas Chandra Bose? Was he a secularist? Was he a socialist? Was he a communist? Was he a nationalist? Was he a Hindutva towards Hindutva, or did he have any friendly alliance with the Muslim League? So there are a lot of these questions which come up because he was not, as we know, he was not affiliated specifically with one ideology and one party, say, end to end. So let's start off. Of course, he was in the Congress. He had spent many years in the Indian National Congress. He knew the inner workings of the Congress. He was the Congress president. So in that way, definitely he was a congressee. We can call him as a congressee, but he had serious differences of opinion with Mahatma Gandhi in terms of how to approach the British, so how to defeat British imperialism. He was in favor of, uh, getting armed, basically having an armed uprising, having the Indians, the majority of the Indians who also were in the Indian army, to actually understand the feeling that they are just a bunch of British folks who are actually handling the army. So if the Indians are actually inspired and they are trained in arms, very easily we can basically drive away the British. So he wanted not a violent, but he wanted an organized and armed kind of an uprising against the British, which was against Gandhi. So there was this Gandhi's Congress, which had Rajendra Prasad, surprisingly, and we have a lot of Rajagopalachari, Kriplani. So they were the core of the Gandhian Congress. Nehru, of course, stood in between Gandhi and Bose. Nehru had a lot of admiration for Bose in terms of, and he was very much inclined towards Bose's idea of what kind of a state to build, a socialist state. But he would never go against Gandhi. So Nehru was kind of in the side, but it was Gandhi's Congress comprising of Gandhi, Patel, Rajendra Prasad, Kriplani, Rajagopalachari, etc. against Bose, basically. So that was one aspect. Now, okay, does that make now what were the grounds of his basic expulsion from the Congress? It was that he was very left to even Nehru. So he was even more leftist than Nehru in the Congress. So he wanted to build a more of a left-wing nationalist movement. So that's why he exited the Congress. He exits the Congress. I mean, basically, when it doesn't matter, he gives up the Congress presidentship, walks out, and what does he form? He forms the All India Forward Bloc, the Forward Bloc Party, which was a left-wing nationalist party. It allied with all the leftist groups in Bengal. It allied with Jugantar. It had, it had he and M.N. Roy, the Communist Party, had very good equation till a certain point. So they had good equations with the communists in Bengal, with the revolutionaries in Bengal, like as I said, Anushilan, Jugantar. So and he was very popular among the youth of Bengal. Bose was very popular. Subhash Bose was very popular amongst the youth of Bengal, especially. So, does that make him now the next question? Does that, okay, he's not a congressee, is he a communist? The answer is no. The answer is he was a socialist. So, Subhash Bose was very much inspired by Soviet Union, the model of socialism which was being built in Soviet Union, similar to Nehru. So he was a socialist. He described himself as a socialist. He said the way we can eliminate the major problems of the country like illiteracy, poverty, is by having the production lined up in on socialistic lines. So he was very much with a 5 year plan and kind of a thing like how even Nehru was. So that's one commonality. But he didn't have patience, or he didn't have interest in Marxist theory. So he was not interested in becoming a Marxist or becoming even a Bolshevik as he says, a Bolshevik agent. So he was not interested in building a revolution of organizing the farmers and the peasants, the workers, to have a kind of a Marxist revolution. No, that was not his end goal. Was socialism. His end goal was to have a more planned socialist lines of production, similar to how was happening in the Soviet Union. That makes him a socialist. So he was not a communist. He had friendly terms with many communists. Later, of course, there are once the forward bloc grows in Bengal, once he comes out of the Congress, and those years he attracts a lot of youth, and the Communist Party in Bengal also gets a bit nervous with him. So they also don't want their cadre to go away to Bose, and they don't want him to become the rallying point of the left in Bengal. So there was friction between them, and the Communist Party also misjudged him when he went and had an understanding with Hitler, with the Nazis, to build the INA. So they called him names, and which later they, of course, self-critically, they did come, because the Communist Party in Bengal was kind of in sync with what the Comintern was doing. So the Comintern line was, when Stalin allies, or when the Russians ally themselves with the West, America, Britain, then the communists basically have they want to not be seen as against British. So they were basically fighting Hitler, they were fighting basically Nazism. So that's why they misjudged they even misjudged the mood in the popular mood in the country, and they self-critically later, of course, they go and say that they misjudged Subhash Bose, and they apologize and things like that. So they give that they gave a wrong analysis of Subhash Bose. Of course, after independence, the party of Subhash Bose, the forward bloc, of course, goes and joins the left front. So it's still part of the left front in Bengal. So in that way, peace has been made between the communists, the forward bloc, Subhash party. So they're all part of the left front, right? So we can say that. Okay, moving on. Was he then a Hindutva wadi? Was he inspired by Hindutva? No, if you read the Indian Pilgrim, Subhash Bose was deeply inspired by the asceticism of Hinduism. When he was young, he had even fled home, and he wanted to become a sannyasi. So he had traveled to a lot of places, and so he had read Vivekanand. He was very much inspired by Vivekanand. So he was very much impressed, and he was very much inclined towards the mysticism of Hinduism, the mysticism, the Vedanta philosophy, and also yoga. So he was very much a Hindu, a practicing Hindu, and he was deeply inspired by these higher philosophical ideals. He used to read a lot, he used to practice meditation, yoga. So in that way, he was very much in sync and a very much practicing Hindu. But he detested the Hindutva politics, and this is very evident when he writes letters, and there's kind of a war of letters between Savarkar and Bose, where Bose criticizes Savarkar's politics, especially after he comes out of after Savarkar comes out of the Andaman Islands, and then he changes his politics. He forms the Hindu Mahasabha. So there's a lot of critique of Savarkar's Hindu Mahasabha's politics of Savarkar by Bose. So he was very critical. He never wanted a communal kind of an India. He never wanted whether a Hindu Rashtra or an Islamic state. He was never in favor of these principles. So he was dead against that. He was staunchly secular, and that's one thing you can ascribe him to. The preamble, what it says, secular and socialist. That was what Bose was. He was secular and socialist. Okay, so so that's with Hindutva. He also has some alliances with the Muslim League in Bengal when they were fighting after he comes out of the Congress, his party forward bloc, so that there was some kind of adjustments with Muslim League in terms of fighting elections. So he was a pragmatist. He knew to grow as a party, to grow as a as a movement to build independence, to defeat British imperialism was his primary target. So he was ready to make friends with anyone or become allies with anyone. His target was to defeat British imperialism. That's why he goes and he wants to actually go to Russia. He goes to Russia. He wants to go to Russia. He wants to actually meet Stalin, and he needs Stalin's help to, that is in once he flees, once he escapes from India, the great escape, he goes to Russia, and he wants to meet and galvanize Russian support for for Indian independence. But at that time the Russians, because the war is going on and they are not in any kind of a mood at that time to have a front against the British. So they were, although having some understanding with Hitler, a non-aligned kind of non-cooperation, you won't attack us, we won't attack you kind of a treaty, but they were not interested. But they did offer a safe passage to Bose through Russia, which was only possible if they were interested in his movement. So, and then he goes to Germany. So of course he makes a deal with Hitler, he builds the INA, the prisoners of war. But we need to understand, he was critical, he was never supported the ideology of Nazism. For him, it was always India, the Indian National Army. And that's very much evident when he forms the Azad Hind Fauj. And like this would address the final question of his secular credentials. The Azad Hind Fauj, it comprised of a lot of Muslims, a lot of Sikhs and Hindus. It was a very multicultural, it was a very multi-religious army, and the top generals in the INA, the Azad Hind Fauj, were Muslims, as we know, Habibur Rahman, who was the close confidant of Bose, who travels, of course, the famous plane crash thing, which is kind of the conspiracy theory, the thing that is that Bose uses to finally escape to Russia eventually. But that, even in that, Habibur Rahman was very much a part of him, Shahnawaz Khan. So I mean, the major generals of the INA were Muslims. The songs of the INA, as we know, Kadam Kadam Badhaye Ja. So there's a lot of Urdu used. So he was very, very multicultural, multilingual, multi-religious. He had this in his ideology. And that's why probably if he had been at the helm of the affairs, even of the Congress or of the national movement, probably would have been more acceptable to to work with for probably Jinnah or Muslim League, because there was more admiration for Bose because of his very staunch secular credentials. And it could have been a different change of fortunes probably had Bose succeeded. So this is brief about his ideological positions, what he wanted finally, and his tactical and strategic alliances. Hope you like this reel. Bharat Raghu signing off.